Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another movie review. And this is probably my last video for tonight, kind of getting late. But this one is on In the Mouth of Madness, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Now this is a movie that I've known about for years. I've always known about this film. Of course, you know, Carpenter fan. But I've never actually seen it before just now. I mean, I've known the story, didn't necessarily know how everything played out, knew how it ended. I mean, there's a bunch of memes about this. As far as Carpenter films go, you know, a lot of people really like this one. Horror fans really like it. Even when I got this arm tattooed, look, it's 7 years ago, the guy that did my arm kept talking about this movie. And just for some, it's always been on my radar, but for some reason, whenever, you know, I go buy movies or whatever, I never think of it. And of course, Scream Factory just did a nice release of it. Has a pretty neat cover, they all do. But I really like this original cover. Came out in 1994, and the thing about Carpenter is, you know, everyone seems to agree, he rose to prominence in the 70s, had classic after classic in the 80s, then in the 90s, the quality of his films just plummeted. I would agree with that, but this came out in 94, and this is probably, if it's not in my top 3, it's definitely in my top 5 favorite John Carpenter films. It's so different from other things he's done, but it is a very Carpenter film, and I mean that in the good sense, not like later half of his career. Fucking stuffy again, I swear to God. Stars Sam Neill, and I would say it's one of my favorite Sam Neill performances. Because, I mean, he's phenomenal in Peaky Blinders. I grew up with him in Jurassic Park. And even though he does give, I haven't seen Possession yet. I've been looking for it. I heard he's phenomenal in that. He does do well in this, but sometimes his accent slips through. Now, of course, In the Mouth of Madness is sort of a play on At the Mountain of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. There's a lot of Lovecraft allusions in this, like it being set in New England. Character's name is, there are characters named Pickman, which there's Pickman family and his stories. The fact that it starts at one point, told in flashback, and works its way up. It's also somewhat of a, like the monsters in it are very Lovecraftian. The author in this could be seen as a Lovecraft figure just as much as Stephen King. So Sam Neill is an insurance investigator who he gets this job where there's a horror author, a very famous horror author named Sutter Cane, which, you know, kind of sounds like Stephen King. Stephen King's even referenced how a Sutter Cane is even outselling Stephen King. Some of his covers actually look like Stephen King books at the time, like the way his name is on the covers, kind of looks like Stephen King books. So he gets hired by Arcane Publishing, which is the publisher that sells his books. The guy's played by Charlton Heston. He hires Sam Neill to go with their top editor to find out what's happened to him. And pretty much along the way, they find out that everything that they're going through is being written in Sutter Cane's new book, In the Mouth of Madness. Of course, Sam Neill is a huge skeptic who doesn't believe it. He thinks it's a publicity stunt. He thinks, it's a big hoax. Up until the very end. And it opens up with him being dragged into an insane asylum, which, if I'm not mistaken, is actually a famous water treatment plant in Toronto, which I think it was also used in the movie Strange Brew with Rick Moranis. Then some time goes by, and one of my favorite character actors, David Warner, he was in The Tenant. He played Keith the photographer in The Omen. I can't remember exactly who he is, but he comes into Sam Neill's cell sometime later. And Sam Neill has all over his padded cell, with like charcoal pen or something, or marker, drawn crosses everywhere. He has crosses all over his face, his skin, his clothes, over everything. And he tells the story that we see. So yeah, he gets hired by Charlton Heston to go find out. Supposedly these Sutter Cane stories are, outselling Stephen King. They're so dark and scary that it causes disorientation and paranoia in, quote, less stable readers. So he's looking into it, and he, at first it's like he finds out there's all these red lines on his covers. So he cuts it out and he realizes it's the shape of New Hampshire. There's like a red dot. So he thinks that's where he's hiding or whatever. And it's this small town named Hobbs End, which I don't know if it's really like a series, but it's called Hobbs End Horror because a lot of his stories take place in Hobbs End. Kind of like Stephen King, like Derry or Castle Rock. And, pretty much just along the way, the editor starts giving in to thinking, this is all being written. She does tell him that there was a publicity stunt where they sent him away, but he never showed up to where he was supposed to be going. And this is sort of like, say, The Shining, or it reminds me a lot of a Jacob's Ladder. It's a very methodical and insidious film where it pulls you in. It starts off small and it gets gradually more and more creepy or scary. Like, when they're driving to the town, it's subtle things, like they're driving down the road. Well, actually, the first thing, I think when he first gets the job, or right before, he's sitting in a diner and this guy walks up with the axe. He's like, "Do you read Sutter Cane?" He's like, "No." And before he can swing, he's shot by the police. But even that scene, that's classic Carpenter. You see Sam Neill sitting with whoever he's sitting with. They're sitting by a window, and in the background, you just see the guy walk up, sort of turn and look and start walking towards them. Sort of like that scene in Halloween, like Jamie Lee Curtis thinks she killed Michael, and he's laying on the floor in the background. He sits up. He doesn't. There's no music to tell you what's coming. You just have to catch it, and that's scarier. Although the score in this is pretty awesome. It's composed by Carpenter himself, like a lot of them. And it's like this good hard rock guitar riff during the opening and closing credits. Other than that, it's just eerie little tones. Also done with Jim Lang, whoever that is. Special makeup effects done by K&B. So Kurtzman, Nicotero, and Berger. I think this was one of the last films they did together as a group before they all went their own ways, and Greg Nicotero became the next Tom Savini, in my opinion. So like they're driving down the road, and it's out in the country. And I don't know if you've ever been driving out in the country. I have. It's sketchy at night because you can only see the little area your headlights light up. At first, it's like they see like a teenage kid on a bicycle. They keep driving and they just see that kid, go in the same direction, but he just keeps popping up. And then eventually, heading in the opposite direction, they see an old man with long white hair wearing the same clothes as the kid, like he's just on this loop on the bicycle. Or, eventually it's just complete blackness. And at this time, the editor's driving. Her name's Stiles. Like, she looks out the window and it's like she's driving on in space. Like, just endless pit. Really kind of eerie shit that, kind of relatable. If you've ever been driving out in the country, if there's a sharp turn, you'll never see it. It's fucked up. And then, like, she hits the old man on the bike, and he says, he won't let me out. He won't let me out. But it's still in the kid's voice, which is kind of eerie. And then it shows her standing there, and then it just shows the old man going by on the bike again like he's fine. They get to this hotel, and there's this old woman played by, I think her name's Frances Bay. It's Happy Gilmore's grandmother. And, she keeps saying, like, I've never heard of Sutter Cane or anything. But supposedly she's a character in a book they're reading where she killed her husband. And there's this weird part where she keeps, like, standing by the counter, she's, like, kicking and looking down. So when Sam Neill walks by, it pans down, and her old, decrepit husband is naked and handcuffed to her ankle. I'm not going to go over every little bit, because I highly do recommend this movie. It is kind of like, I like movies like this, or like the 78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where someone's really good at their job, they take on the next job or the next case, and it just, is either madness or shit hits the fan. Or it does remind me of Jacob's Ladder, even though it's very different. And, there's just things like kids keep popping up and people look weird. There's a scene where there's a big church and there's all these townspeople, shouting Cain. And the guy that's shouting Cain, and we see him later on Sam Neill sees him at the bar. He's played by Wilhelm von Homburg, who plays Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2. It's a really slow burn, but about halfway through is where it really picks up and it gets really deep and thought-provoking. Like, Sam Neill starts to think everyone's against him and that it's all a hoax against him, because there's no way things can be that much of a coincidence. And, finally, Sam Neill's in the church, and a Sutter Cane himself is in a confessional booth. And it's this thing about how, his books have sold over 1 billion copies, translated to 18 languages, and pretty much, the power of belief can make something real. So pretty much say, like, people read his books and they believe him so much that it actually awakened some ancient evil that will bring the apocalypse. And saying how there's more people that believe in my books than the Bible, so it's now creating a new reality. And so, I'm going to say spoiler alert, but with all the memes and everything that's out about this movie, like horror memes about horror fans, I'm sure most people know how this film ends, but just in case spoilers, highly recommend it. If you're a Carpenter fan, you haven't seen it, don't be like me and keep putting it off. Go out and see it. If you're just getting into Carpenter, this is one of my favorites of his. It would probably go Halloween. Halloween or The Thing are tied. I can never decide. And then probably this, then Christine, then The Fog. Then probably They Live. I know those are my top ones. But anyway, spoilers. Highly recommend it. It is kind of a mindfucky of a movie. The effects, when you do see them, are well done. It's a sort of... like, it's a part where he's running through this sort of seemingly endless tunnel with all these Lovecraftian monsters behind him. But there's like a lot of shadow and lighting, and you only see it for quick glimpses. So they're pretty obscure, but it helps the effect. Like, your imagination's making up what the rest of the monsters look like. But they're well done. So, yeah, spoilers from here on out. Go see it. Highly recommend it. Sutter Cane gives him the finished manuscript for In the Mouth of Madness. And everywhere he goes... oh, because he says, you're going to turn this into Arcane Publishing, and then it's going to bring on the apocalypse. He, once he gets back out to the real world, he leaves the manuscript, he goes into a hotel, and, the clerk says this was sent for you. It keeps popping up. There's that famous scene where he's on the bus, and it's like a looping dream where he like has a breakdown on the bus. Good performance. It doesn't look hokey or cheesy when he's screaming. I know, I'm sorry, I'm stuffy. And then, he gets back to Arcane Publishing, and he finds out he took the job on his own. There was no editor with him. He already turned in the manuscript months ago. The book's already been out. The movie's coming out soon. And I really like the scene where, we hear like a radio broadcast about how people are rioting and looting to get this book. We even see like a poster of it where there's artwork that looks like Sam Neill. He's standing in front of this bookstore, and this guy comes out and he has like blood under his eyes, which is like a sign that he's been like recruited, I guess. And Sam Neill, he's looked fine the whole movie, but at this point, like, he's got stubble, his hair's all messed up, he's pale, he's sweaty, he's got this look in his eye. He's just like, do you read Sutter? Oh, he was like, because a lot of people keep asking, do you read Sutter Cane? She's like, you like the book? He's like, I love it. And he's like, well, this should come as a surprise to you. Hits him with an axe, and that's why he gets sent to the asylum. So then we pick up from the beginning. He's talking to David Warner. And this is a question that would have popped up. Sam Neill says, so many people read his books and they believe it so much, it's gonna bring on the end of the world. David Warner's like, what about people that don't read? And he's like, there's a movie out. He's like, oh, of course. So we're supposed to, and he says, maybe 10 years, maybe less, the human race will just be done. David Warner walks out of the cell and talks to John Glover, he's played a lot of people. He was in Shazam, I don't remember who. He played Jason Woodrue in Batman and Robin. And this is where we find out David Warner says he was useless. He thinks Sutter Cane's readers are the cause of the epidemic. So it's already happening. And, Sam Neill's in his cell, and there's, like, lightning and thunder. You hear people screaming. You can tell there's monsters out there. Then it stops. He's able to leave his cell. He walks down to a theater where In the Mouth of Madness is playing. He sits down and he watches everything that just happened. Like, seemingly starring him also. And he just laughs hysterically at what he's seeing. Pretty much driven insane. So yeah, I see the Lovecraft, I see the Stephen King references, which Carpenter is a Stephen King fan. It's probably why he directed Christine. Another good Carpenter film. So, I see the nods to King, I see the nods to Lovecraft. It is a very sophisticated Carpenter film. It's like the same kind of sophistication that he did Halloween and The Thing and The Fog, but with this kind of material. And I think he did a very good job. It's thought-provoking, it's creepy. It's one of those mind-fucking movies, where someone's, they find they've been living something that's totally different to their reality. I keep saying Jacob's Ladder. It is kind of similar to Jacob's Ladder in that sense. He's living what's been written in a book. Jacob's Ladder, he's been dead the whole time. He just hasn't crossed over. So yeah, I don't know what took me so long to see this, but I'm glad I finally did. Well worth the wait. This is the third of Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, which consists of The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and this. Still haven't seen Prince of Darkness. They're not like a trilogy where they all continue from each other, or it's like different stages of apocalypse. It can be any stage. Like The Thing, it's like there's the threat of if this alien gets out. This, the apocalypse pretty much happened. But yeah, it's a good, eerie, thought-provoking, very methodical and insidious movie. Even though Sam Neill's accent does slip out sometimes, it's a pretty solid performance. Solid performance by everybody, Charlton Heston, David Warner especially. The imagery, it's weird, it's surreal, it's otherworldly. I like the K&B effects on the Lovecraftian monsters are really well done. The whole thing, he balanced this great fictional world with the real world to the point where you can't tell what's what. Sort of disturbing imagery, like a repetition, like the kid on the bike, the guy getting beaten up in the alley. Just things that, deja vu can make people crazy. Just very well done movie. And this probably is, I haven't seen vampires since I was a kid, and that came out after this. But as of right now, I would say this is the last true good Carpenter film. And it's one of my favorites by him. In the Mouth of Madness. Kind of longer than usual, but anyway, I gotta go blow my nose. And probably last video for tonight, so thank you for watching.